Sarah Carson's blood stains the wooden floor of her bedroom, a crimson trail leading to the shattered window. The Blackwood gang thought they were just taking another rancher's daughter for ransom. They were wrong. In the flickering candlelight, James Carson kneels beside his daughter's broken music box, his calloused hands trembling not with fear, but with a rage he hasn't felt in 15 years. Behind him, a hidden door creaks open, revealing a silver-plated colt and a tin star stained, dark with old blood. They called him the Silver Snake, the deadliest bounty hunter the territories had ever seen. A man who brought in 37 killers, none of them alive. He gave up that life to raise his daughter in peace. Now, as dawn breaks over Texas, the legendary manhunter loads his gun with steady hands. The Blackwood gang didn't just take a girl, they woke a demon. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun painted long shadows across the Carson ranch as James worked the forge, hammering a broken horseshoe back into shape. 5 years of honest ranching had weathered his hands differently than his gun had, calluses from rope and plow replacing the trigger finger scars of his past life. Sweat dripped from his graying temples as he worked, the rhythmic clanging of metal on metal drowning out the whispers of his violent history. His daughter Sarah's voice carried across the yard, singing as she fed the chickens. At 16, she was the spitting image of her mother, same golden hair, same fierce spirit. She'd never known her father as anything but a rancher, never seen the cold steel behind his eyes when riders came too close to their land. The ranch wasn't much, 100 acres of Texas scrubland, a sturdy house, barn and corral, but it was honest, clean. The kind of life he'd promised Martha he'd give their daughter before the fever took her. Most days, he could almost forget the weight of his old gun belt, the whispered stories of the Silver Snake that still circulated in saloons across the territory. Sheriff Mills rode up just as Carson was finishing with the shoe, dust coating his bay mare. The lawman had been new to these parts when Carson settled here, young enough not to recognize the face of a legend. "Morning, James," he called, accepting a dipper of well water. "Thought you should know. Riders coming up from Mexico." "Way, bad sorts." Carson's hands stilled on the forge. "Bandits?" "Worse, Blackwood gangs moving north, already hit 2 homesteads near Fort Davis." Mills shook his head. "Mean bunch. Take what they want, leave bodies behind." Sarah's singing drifted over again, innocent and clear. Carson's jaw tightened, old instincts stirring. "Thanks for the warning, Sheriff. Just being neighborly. Might want to keep that shotgun loaded." Mills didn't notice how Carson's eyes had changed, taking on that flat, deadly look that used to make outlaws pray for mercy. After the sheriff rode off, Carson stood at his forge for a long while, staring south. 5 years was a long time to bury who you were, but some things never changed. The way his ears caught every hoofbeat on the wind, the way his eyes constantly scanned the horizon, the way his hands remembered the weight of his colt, even through years of honest work. That evening, as shadows lengthened across the yard, Sarah brought him coffee on the porch. "Something wrong, Pa. You've been quiet since the sheriff left." Carson pulled her close, breathing in the lavender scent of her hair. "Just thinking, darling. Just thinking." He didn't tell her about the hidden cellar beneath the barn's floor, where his old gun belt lay, wrapped in oiled cloth. Didn't mention how he'd walked the ranch's perimeter at dawn and dusk every day for 5 years, checking for signs most men wouldn't notice. Didn't speak of the nightmare that woke him some nights, the fear that his past would someday find them. Sarah sat beside him, her head on his shoulder like she used to as a child. "Tell me about when you met Mama." It was her favorite story, and he told it the same way he always did, about the young horse trader who fell in love with a rancher's daughter. He left out the parts about being hired to hunt down the men who'd killed her brother, about how Martha had seen past his reputation to the man he could be. Some stories weren't meant for a daughter's ears. Later, as crickets sang in the darkness, Carson stood in his room. He pulled up the loose floorboard and lifted out the wooden box he hadn't opened in 5 years. Inside, the silver-plated Colt gleamed like new, well-oiled despite its retirement. Beside it lay his deputy marshal's badge and a folded wanted poster, his last bounty, the one that had convinced him to quit while he still had a soul left to save. He ran a finger along the gun's barrel, remembering. Then he replaced the box, covered it up, and went to sleep like any other peaceful rancher. But he slept with one ear tuned to the night, the way he always had. Dawn broke over the Carson ranch with unusual beauty that final morning, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Sarah was up early, as always, the smell of coffee and biscuits drifting from the kitchen. Carson watched her from the doorway, his heart swelling at how much she looked like Martha, moving between stove and table with the same gentle grace. "You're hovering again, Pa," she said without turning, a smile in her voice. "Set the table instead of standing there like a fence post." He did as told, their morning routine comfortable as an old saddle. The kitchen was warm with morning sun and wood smoke, the air rich with the scent of breakfast. These were the moments that made him grateful he'd left the killing behind. "Miss Wilson says I should go to Teachers' College in Austin," Sarah mentioned, setting a plate of biscuits down. "Says I've got a good mind for learning." Carson's hands stilled on the plates. Austin was far, too far for a father's peace of mind. "That so? Don't look so worried, Pa." She kissed his cheek. "I'm not leaving just yet. Someone's got to keep." "You fed." They ate together, talking about small things. The new calf in the north pasture, whether rain would come before harvest, the church social next Sunday. Sarah had been asked to play piano, and her eyes lit up talking about the songs she'd practice. "I was thinking," she said, pushing crumbs around her plate, "about Mama's old music box, the one that doesn't work right anymore. Maybe next time you ride to town, we could see if Mr. Henderson can fix it." The music box had been Martha's wedding gift, its tune a piece of her that lived on. "Course we can, darling. We'll go tomorrow, make a day of it." After breakfast, Sarah headed out to gather eggs, her voice carrying back to him in snatches of song. Carson watched her go, something uneasy stirring in his gut. He'd felt this way before, in his hunting days, a sixth sense for trouble brewing. "Pa?" She turned at the chicken coop. "Think we could ride up to the high meadow later? Weather's perfect for a picnic." He had fencing to mend, horses to shoe, but the sunlight caught her hair just right, making it glow like her mother's used to. "Reckon the work can wait one day." Her smile was worth any amount of delayed chores. If he'd known it was the last real smile he'd see from her, he might have burned it deeper into his memory. Sheriff Mills arrived as Carson and Sarah were saddling horses for their planned ride. The lawman's face was grim, his horse lathered from hard riding. Carson recognized the look. Bad news riding hard on a fast horse. "James?" Mills nodded, dismounting. "Miss Sarah, might I have a word with your father?" "Official business." Sarah caught her father's eye, concern crossing her face. "I'll go pack that picnic, Pa." Once she was out of earshot, Mills spoke low and fast. "Blackwood gang hit the Thompson place last night. 3 dead, including Mary Thompson. Her girl's missing." Carson's hand tightened on his saddle horn. "Mary Thompson taught Sunday school, her daughter just a year older than Sarah. How far?" 20 miles south, but that ain't the worst of it." Mills pulled out a crumpled wanted poster. "Got this from a marshal this morning. Look familiar?" The poster showed a face Carson knew well. Jake Blackwood, younger then but unmistakable. Below the sketch was a list of crimes, and at the bottom, in faded ink, "Captured by Deputy Marshal J. Carson, escaped custody 1868. "Didn't make the connection till now," Mills said. "You being a rancher and all. But you're him, ain't you? The Silver Snake." Carson studied the poster, memories flooding back. Jake Blackwood had been his last capture before retiring. A particularly vicious killer. He'd escaped during transport, swearing revenge. That was a long time ago, Sheriff. Well, he's back and he's worse. Running with his brothers now, Tom and Edwin. They've got 15 riders, all mean as snakes, hit 4 ranches in the last month, take what they want, kill the men, sometimes take the women. Mills hesitated. James, they're asking about you. In towns, looking for a rancher with a young daughter. The cold feeling in Carson's gut crystallized. He looked toward the house where Sarah was packing their picnic, humming as she worked. How long? Till they get here? Day, maybe 2. I've sent for help, but the nearest marshals are in El Paso. Be 4 days at least before they arrive. Carson nodded slowly, his mind already shifting, old instincts awakening. Sheriff, might be best if you forget what you know about who I was. Mills studied him. Already forgotten. But James, if it comes to it, would you, if it comes to my daughter? Carson's voice went cold, the kind of cold that used to make outlaws shiver. There won't be enough left of them to hang. After Mills rode off, Carson stood in the yard, calculating. The gang would come fast once they confirmed his location. He should get Sarah to town, somewhere safe. But Blackwood was cunning. He'd expect that. Watch the roads. Pa! Sarah called from the porch. Everything all right? He forced a smile. Just fine, darling. Ready for that ride? But as they rode out, Carson's eyes constantly scanned the horizon, and his thoughts kept drifting to the hidden cellar beneath. The barn floor, where his silver-plated colt waited. Somewhere out there, Jake Blackwood was coming with blood in his eye and 15 killers at his back, coming for revenge against the man who'd nearly hanged him, and he was coming for Sarah. Carson was in town when they came, haggling with the blacksmith over the price of horseshoes. Later, he would replay that moment 1,000 times, torturing himself with what-ifs. If he'd been home. If he'd taken Sarah with him. If he'd moved. Then the moment Mills warned him. Sarah was alone in the house, practicing hymns on the small piano they'd saved a year to buy. The first sign of trouble was the dogs falling silent mid-bark. Through the window, she saw riders approaching. 15 men, dust-covered and grim. Her father's warnings echoed in her mind. If trouble comes, run to the cellar, bar the door. She never made it. Jake Blackwood dismounted in the yard, his spurs ringing against packed earth. "Little lady," he called out, voice dripping false honey. "Your pa around, man named James Carson." Sarah stood in the doorway, her mother's stubborn chin lifting. "He's due back any minute. Best state your business." Blackwood smiled, an ugly thing that never touched his eyes. "Oh, we'll wait. Tom, Edwin. Check the barn. Rest of you, spread out." The brothers moved with practiced efficiency, clearing the property. Sarah's hand tightened on the doorframe, reading the violence in their movements. These weren't ordinary riders. "Ain't here, Jake," Tom called from the barn. "But look what we found." He emerged holding her father's old saddlebags, weathered, leather still showing the faint outline, where a marshal's badge once pinned. Blackwood's false friendliness vanished. "Well now, guess it is the right Carson after all." His eyes locked on Sarah. "Time for a family reunion, girl." She slammed the door, shooting the bolt. Her hands shook as she ran for her father's room, for the hidden compartment under the floorboards. The gang's laughter outside turned ugly. "Fetch me that door, boys." Wood splintered under heavy boots. Sarah's fingers found the loose board, yanked it up. Inside lay an oiled cloth bundle. She unwrapped it with trembling hands, revealing her father's silver-plated colt. The door crashed inward. Sarah spun, raising the gun the way she'd seen her father do during target practice. The revolver roared, the recoil nearly tearing it from her grip. A man cursed, blood spattering from his shoulder. "Little snake's got bite," someone shouted. Then they were on her, rough hands knocking the gun away. She fought like a wildcat, scratching, kicking, breaking free twice before a blow to the head sent darkness crashing down. Blackwood stood over her unconscious form, touching his bleeding cheek where she'd scored him with her nails. "Carson's brat, all right. Same fight in her." He grinned at his men. String up a corpse from Thompson's place, dressed in her clothes. Let the snake think his precious girl's dead while we get a good head start." They left the house in chaos. Furniture smashed, Sarah's blood staining the floor, her music box shattered beside the door. A final message scrawled in charcoal on the wall. "Remember me, snake." 2 hours later, Carson rode into his yard. He saw the open door, the signs of struggle. Something inside him, something he'd buried years ago, came awake with terrible purpose. In the dying light, he knelt beside Sarah's broken music box. His fingers traced the bloodstains, reading the story written in scattered belongings and overturned furniture. When he found his silver colt on the floor, a single shot fired, pride mingled with his rage. His girl had fought back, standing slowly. Carson walked to his room. The hidden compartment was open, its contents scattered. But they'd missed the second hidden space, the one even Sarah didn't know about. From it, he withdrew a tin star, dark with old blood, and a well-oiled gun belt. The peaceful rancher died in that moment. In his place stood the legend that had once made killers tremble at a whispered name, the Silver Snake. Sheriff Mills found Carson kneeling in the yard, reading sign that most men would miss. The rancher's movements were different now, precise, predatory. Every trace told its story to his experienced eyes. 15 riders, 4 heavily loaded horses, one lighter horse carrying Sarah. "James," Mills started, "found a body up by Thompson Creek. Girl in Sarah's dress, but ain't her." Carson didn't look up, fingers sifting dirt through them. Blackwood's trying to buy time. Trail's 5 hours old. They're heading southwest toward the Diablos. "How can you be sure?" Carson pointed to barely visible marks in the dust. "Horse. With a notched front shoe. Jake still rides the same stallion. 7 years ago, that shoe mark led me straight to him in New Mexico territory." He stood slowly. "They're making for the old Mackenzie mine. 20 miles of bad country. Perfect place to hole up." Mills shifted uncomfortably. "James, about who you used to be." "Silver Snake's been retired 5 years. Carson checked his gun belt, the silver-plated Colt sliding smooth as silk from its holster. "But sometimes a snake's got to wake up and bite." He moved toward the barn, each step measured. The lawmen followed, watching as Carson pulled up the hidden cellar door. Inside, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay the tools of his former trade. A Winchester rifle, boxes of ammunition, throwing knives, and a worn leather journal filled with notes on every killer he'd ever tracked. "I sent word to the marshals," Mills offered. "They'll be here in 3 days. Sarah doesn't have 3 days." Carson's voice was cold as mountain snow. "Blackwood's got a score to settle. He'll want me to hurry, make mistakes. That's why he left such an obvious trail." "It's a trap." "Course it is." Carson strapped on his gear with practiced efficiency. "Difference is, I know it's a trap. And I know Jake Blackwood. Man's got 3 habits he can't break. Plays with his watch chain when he's lying, camps near running water, and always posts his youngest brother Edwin on first watch. He emerged from the cellar transformed. Gone was the peaceful rancher in dusty work clothes. In his place stood a legend in black duster and flat-brimmed hat, silver badge catching the fading light. 15 men, James, even for the Silver Snake. 16. Men tried to ambush me outside El Paso in '66. Carson checked his rifle's action. Wasn't enough then either. He mounted his stallion, the same horse that had carried him through 100 manhunts. The animal sensed the change in his rider, dancing with nervous energy. "What do you need from me?" Mills asked. "Keep the marshals away. This isn't about the law anymore." Carson's eyes were granite hard in the dying light. "This is about a father's right to protect his child, and about reminding Jake Blackwood why they called me Silver Snake." With that, he touched spurs to horse, moving out on the trail with the same deadly purpose that had made him a legend. The rancher was gone. In his place rode something far more dangerous, a father with nothing left to lose, and a killer who'd never failed to bring down his prey. Dusk painted the desert blood red as Carson made his first camp, choosing a high point with good visibility. He'd pushed his horse hard, eating miles of trail, but Blackwood's gang had fresh mounts and a head start. The hunt would take time, and rushing would only spring their trap early. In the dying light, he spread his old journal before him. 15 years of man-hunting wisdom recorded in faded ink, notes on killers' habits, preferred hideouts, the tells that gave away their lies. He'd added Jake Blackwood's page last, before hanging up his guns. Now he studied it with fresh eyes. Jake Blackwood, quick with a knife, likes to toy with victims, watches their fear, right-handed but carries a hideout derringer in his left. Boot, brothers Tom, slow, strong, and Edwin, young, nervous, always ride with him. Leadership depends on fear. Break him, the others scatter. Carson's hands move through familiar routines, cleaning his guns with the same precision he'd once used to clean Sarah's scraped knees. Each weapon held memories. The Winchester that had taken down the Carson City gang, the backup revolver that saved him in Dodge City, the silver Colt that made his legend. "Remember who you're doing this for," Martha had whispered on her deathbed. "Our Sarah needs a father, not a killer." He'd kept that promise for 5 years, built something clean and good. But now, loading fresh cartridges into his gun belt, he felt the old hunger stirring, the focused clarity that came with hunting dangerous men. A sound caught his ear, horse hooves on stone, trying to be quiet. Carson doused his fire with sand, moved to cover. 3 riders emerged from the darkness, local roughnecks he recognized from town. They'd seen him tracking, thought to earn some glory. "That's far enough," he called out, voice carrying the same authority that used to make posses snap to attention. "Carson?" The lead rider squinted. "Heard about Sarah. We're riding with you." "No." The word fell like a hammer blow. 3 extra guns would get in my way. Carson stepped into moonlight, letting them see what he'd become. "This isn't about justice. It's not about the law. What I'm going to do isn't something decent men should witness." Something in his voice, in the way he stood, made them back their horses away. They'd come looking for the grieving rancher. Instead, they found the legend their fathers had warned them about. After they rode off, Carson returned to his preparations. From a hidden pocket in his saddle, he withdrew a small tin star, its silver surface stained dark. He didn't pin it on. That life was past, but he laid it beside him as he worked, a reminder of the man he'd been, the man he needed to be again. His fingers traced the worn edges of Sarah's daguerreotype, the only personal item he carried. In it she smiled like her mother, full of light and hope. That smile was his anchor, the thing that would keep him from losing himself completely to the killer he'd once been. "I'm coming, darling," he whispered to the image, "and God help any man who's harmed you." Through the night, he worked with methodical precision, checking ammunition, arranging throwing knives for quick draw, mentally mapping the territory ahead. The old instincts flowed back like water finding its course, how to approach from the sun's angle, how to read flutter in birds for signs of movement, how to become the hunter these men feared. By dawn, James Carson, loving father and peaceful, rancher, was fully submerged beneath the cold calculation of the silver snake. Only the daguerreotype in his pocket remained to remind him why a legend had awakened from its 5-year slumber. And as he rode out, the rising sun caught his silver gold, making it shine like scales on a deadly serpent uncoiling for the kill. The 2 gang members never saw death coming. They'd been left to watch the back trail, confident that 15 armed men could handle one aging rancher. They were sharing a bottle, arguing over cards when Carson materialized from the morning mist. "Like a ghost, evening, boys." His voice froze them mid-draw. "Blackwood still paying double shares for watch duty?" The nearest man's eyes widened with recognition. "Silver sn." The rest was lost as Carson's Colt cleared leather. 2 shots, so close together they sounded like one. Both men fell without firing. A round, their cards scattering in the dust. Carson searched them with professional efficiency. Their saddlebags yielded what he needed, a crumpled map marking the Mackenzie mine, letters detailing backup plans, and most importantly, Sarah's hair. Ribbon, deliberately left to taunt him. He found their horses hobbled nearby. Good animals, fresh. He turned his own mount loose with a slap. The stallion would find its way home. From now on, he'd travel like he used to, switching mounts to keep ahead. Of pursuit, a folded paper in one man's pocket caught his attention. Orders from Blackwood, written in a crude hand. Watch for the snake. He's coming sure as hell. First man spots him gets extra gold. First man kills him gets everything in the strongbox. But remember, we need him following. Girl dies if he's too slow. Carson's jaw tightened. Jake was playing games, leaving breadcrumbs. Wanted him to hurry, to get sloppy. The same mistake that had let the killer escape 7 years ago. He dumped the bodies in a shallow wash, covered them with just enough dirt to delay discovery. The carrion birds would lead the gang back eventually. Tell them what kind of hunter was on their trail. The dead men's guns went into his saddlebags. Good weapons could be useful later. One had carried a Henry rifle, barely used. Carson checked. Its action added it to his arsenal. In his experience, you could never have too many guns when the killing started. Back in the saddle, he studied the terrain ahead. The gang's main camp would be 2 hours north, near water. They'd post guards expecting pursuit from that direction, so he turned east, into broken country where a man could move unseen. It was a longer route, but it would bring him around behind their positions. The same tactic he'd used to crack the Carson City gang, strike from the unexpected angle, let fear do half the work. Patience, he whispered, though whether to himself or Sarah, he wasn't sure. Patience and precision. The morning sun rose behind him as he rode, casting his shadow long across the desert. 2 men dead, 13 to go, plus Jake Blackwood, who'd learned that stealing a snake's only child was the last mistake he'd ever make. Territory Marshal Daniel Wade stood in the shallow wash, studying the 2 fresh graves with experienced eyes. The bodies had been searched methodically, positioned with professional care, then covered just enough to slow discovery. But the killer had wanted them found eventually, a message to those who followed. Both shot through the heart, his deputy reported, single bullet each. Had to be damn good with a gun to manage that in the dark. Wade knelt, fingers tracing bullet holes in the men's shirts. Clean shots, close together. Not good, Roberts, the best. He held up a playing card from the scattered deck, its center, pierced perfectly. This wasn't revenge killing, this was craft. He'd seen work like this before, back when he rode with the legendary Silver Snake. Carson had a way of making death look elegant, each kill a lesson in efficiency. Now, examining the scene, Wade recognized his old partner's signature. Been 5 years, he muttered, standing. What made you strap on those guns again, James? The answer came from a local sheriff who'd ridden out to meet them. Mills told the story quickly. Carson's daughter taken, Blackwood gang headed for the mountains. 15 riders against 1 man. 15, Roberts whistled. No single man could... You never rode with the snake, Wade cut him off. I have. Watched him take down the Carson City gang single-handed. 20 men, all killers. By the time he finished, they were begging to surrender. He mounted up, decision made. We're riding parallel to this, not interfering, just observing. Sir, Roberts looked confused. Don't we have authority? This isn't about authority anymore. Wade checked his guns out of habit. This is about a father's right to retrieve his child, and about watching a legend remind these territories why men used to whisper his name in fear. They rode north, following tracks that most men would miss. Wade read the sign like a book. Carson moving east through rough country, taking the long way around. Smart. The same tactic he'd used against the Hawkins brothers back in '65. "What kind of man is he?" Roberts asked as they rode. "This snake," Wade considered the question. "Imagine a wolf that learned to think like a man, patient, methodical. Most manhunters get sloppy when it's personal, not Carson. Anger just makes him colder, more precise." He pointed to distant birds circling. "See that? He's leading the gang scouts on a false trail while he circles behind their main camp. Classic Carson strategy. Make them think they're the hunters until it's too late." "And we're just going to watch?" "Watch and remember." Wade settled in his saddle. "Because you're about to see something rare, Deputy. You're going to see why they called him Silver Snake, why even other bounty hunters stayed clear of his territory." A shot echoed from distant rocks, followed by silence. "That'll be another scout down," Wade said calmly. "Carson's tightening the noose, cutting off their eyes. By the time Blackwood realizes what's happening, he'll be surrounded by his own men's graves." Roberts shivered despite the desert heat. "You sound like you admire him." "Admire him?" "Deputy, I'm alive because of him. 13 years ago, Crow Mountain Massacre. I was the only marshal who survived. Carson tracked those killers for 3 weeks. When he finished, there were 18 new graves in the desert and a legend was born. They made camp as darkness fell, close enough to watch, but far enough to stay clear." Wade sat cleaning his guns, remembering old hunts. "Thing about Carson," he told his deputy, "he's not just deadly, he's patient, methodical. Each death is a message to the ones still breathing. By tomorrow, Blackwood's men will start looking over their shoulders, jumping at shadows. That's when the real hunt begins." In the distance, a nightbird called. Wade smiled grimly, recognizing the sound as artificial. Carson's old signal, hunter moving in darkness. "Get some sleep, Roberts. Tomorrow we'll see how many more graves the snake adds to his count." Sarah Carson sat bound in the old mine office, watching Jake Blackwood pace by lamplight. Her head throbbed where they'd struck her, but her eyes stayed defiant. When Blackwood pulled out a battered tin-type photograph, she refused to look away. "No. Who this is?" He thrust the image at her. A young woman smiled back, pretty once. "My sister, Mary Beth." The snake never mentioned her, did he? Never told you how she died? Sarah's silence made him laugh, ugly and sharp. "Course not. Man like that doesn't tell his precious daughter how many lives he's ruined. Mary Beth was 17 when your father tracked us to New Mexico. She wasn't part of our business, just a girl trying to take care of her brothers." Outside, a sentry called the all clear. 3 hours since they'd lost contact with the back trail watchers. Blackwood's men were getting nervous. "When the shooting started," he continued, "she ran the wrong way. 1 bullet, that's all it took. Your father's bullet." "You're lying," Sarah said quietly. "My father doesn't kill innocent people." Blackwood grabbed her chin. "Silver Snake killed anyone who got in his way. Biggest difference between him and us was he had a badge to hide behind." Tom Blackwood burst in, face pale. "Jake found Wilson and Meeks, both shot through the heart, clean as church work. The snake's coming," Jake smiled, but his eyes were fever-bright. "Good. Been waiting 7 years to show him what real suffering looks like." He turned back to Sarah. "Know what your father did after my sister died? Tracked me for 2 weeks, shot my horse out from under me, dragged me back to hang." His fingers traced an old scar on his neck. "Rope broke, God's own miracle, but I swore that day Snake was going to learn what it feels like to lose family." Sarah remembered her father's hands, gentle when bandaging her scrapes, teaching her to ride. The same hands that had killed these men's sister. "If you hurt me, he'll kill you all." "That's the plan, girl. But first, he's going to watch you die, slow, like I watched Mary Beth bleed out in the dust." Blackwood's voice dropped. "Then, when he's broken, when he's begging, then we'll send him to join her." A commotion outside drew him to the window. One of his men rode in hard, looking spooked. Found Martinez, shot dead up in the rocks, clean through the eye at 200 yards. Blackwood's facade cracked slightly. 3 men down, no sound of shooting, no traces, just like before. The snake, moving invisible through the dark. "Double the watch," he ordered. "No one rides alone. He's out there playing his old games." Sarah watched him try to hide his fear as he stormed out, but she'd seen it plain. The terror of a man who'd spent 7 years convincing himself he was ready for this moment, only to feel the old dread creeping back. Through the barred window, she studied the moonlit desert. Somewhere out there, her father was coming. Not the gentle rancher she knew, but something else, something these men feared more than death itself. She touched her mother's locket, still hanging around her neck. Inside was a small photo of her. Parents on their wedding day. Her father looked different then, harder, eyes like stone. The same eyes she'd seen when she fired his gun at the raiders. Now she understood why he'd buried that part of himself, why he never spoke of his past. But Blackwood had dug up more than just old graves with his vengeance. He'd awakened something that should have stayed sleeping. And Sarah realized, watching these killers jump at shadows, that she wasn't just bait in a trap. She was about to witness the revenge of a legend. The 3 gang members huddled around their small fire, trying to look alert while fighting exhaustion. They'd drawn the midnight watch, positioned to guard the trail leading to the mine, but their eyes kept straying to the darkness, jumping. At every sound, 4 men dead, the youngest muttered, and not a single one got off a shot. It ain't natural. "Shut up about that," the leader, McCullough, snapped, but his hand kept straying to his gun. The 3rd man, Davis, leaned forward. "I heard stories about the snake. They say he once tracked the Hawkins brothers through a blizzard, found 'em frozen stiff, bullets in their hearts. Man ain't human." A pebble clattered down the slope behind them. All 3 spun, guns drawn. Nothing. "Getting jumpy as colts," McCullough forced a laugh. "Snake's just a man, bleeds like any—" The whispered words came from everywhere and nowhere. "Want to test that theory?" Before they could move, Carson stepped from shadows they'd sworn were empty seconds ago. His silver colt caught moonlight, making it shimmer like scales. "Weapons on the ground," he said softly. "Nice and easy." They complied, hands shaking. Up close, he wasn't what they expected. No giant killer, just a weathered man in a black duster. But his eyes made them understand why men feared him. "My daughter," he said. "The girl," Blackwood took. "She alive?" McCullough nodded quickly. "Ain't touched her. Jake's keeping her for when you—" He stopped, realizing his mistake. "For when I what?" Carson's voice went colder. "Please," the young one broke. "We're just hired guns." Blackwood didn't tell us about no personal vendetta until after. Carson's left hand moved, impossibly fast. The throwing knife took the boy in the throat, silencing him. Before his body hit the ground, 2 shots rang out. McCullough and Davis fell, their own guns half drawn. Moving methodically, Carson searched the bodies. More confirmation of Blackwood's plan, more evidence of his madness. He kept one letter written in Jake's crude hand, detailing exactly how he planned to make the snake suffer. Dawn was still hours away when Carson dragged the bodies into a shallow cave. 5 down now, 11 left, plus the Blackwood brothers. Each death was a message, each kill tightening the noose. He gathered their weapons, good guns were always useful, and scattered the fire's remains. By the time anyone found them, the only story they'd tell would be in the precision of their wounds. The snake's signature, written in lead and blood. Looking south toward the mine, Carson allowed himself a cold smile. Jake's plan had too many moving parts, too many men who could break. The same mistake he'd made 7 years ago, trying to outthink a hunter who'd spent 15 years learning every way men could die in the desert. "I'm coming, Sarah," he whispered to the night. "Just a little longer. Just a few more graves to dig." Somewhere in the darkness a coyote wailed, a lonely sound that could have been weeping. Fear rode with the Blackwood gang as they pushed deeper into the mountains. Every crack of a branch, every shadow at dusk made hardened killers flinch. 8 men dead in 3 days, each killed with surgical precision. No shots heard, no signs of approach. Just bodies found in the morning, bullet holes placed like an artist's signature. "He's hunting us," Edwin Blackwood whispered, passing a shaking hand over his face. At 22, he was the youngest of the brothers, and the first to break. Like he did before, playing with us. Jake backhanded him hard enough to draw blood. "Shut up. He's one man, one aging bounty hunter who got lucky." "Lucky?" Tom Blackwood spat. "Martinez took a bullet through the eye at 200 yards, in the dark. That ain't luck, Jake. That's the devil himself coming for us." They'd holed, up in a box canyon, walls too steep to climb. Defensible, Jake had said. A good place to spring their trap. But now the canyon walls loomed over them like prison bars, and every man knew they weren't the trappers anymore. Sarah watched them from her makeshift cell in a cave mouth, noting their growing terror. Even with 8 men still alive, plus the Blackwood brothers, they bunched together like scared cattle. No one wanted to take watch alone. No one slept more than minutes at a time. A rider appeared at the canyon's mouth, making them jump. Just their own scout, but he rode in fast, eyes wild. "Found Peterson," he gasped, "up in the high rocks, playing cards laid out on his chest, aces and 8s, dead man's hand." Jake's face went pale. 7 years ago, he'd woken to find those same cards on his chest, the snake's way of saying he could have killed him in his sleep. The memory made his hand drift to the rope scar on his neck. "He's saying we're already dead," Tom muttered. "Just who don't know it yet. Then we change the game." Jake stormed to Sarah's cave. "Time your pa learned who's really in control." He grabbed her arm, dragged her out. Sarah fought, but he was stronger. In the firelight, she saw madness in his eyes, the desperation of a man feeling death's noose tighten. "Snake!" he bellowed into the darkness. "You hearing me? Got a message for you!" The canyon walls threw his voice back, making him sound small. No answer came from the shadows, but Sarah felt the night watching. Somewhere out there, her father was listening. "Every hour we don't see you," Jake shouted, "your girl loses a finger. Want to test how patient you really are." The words echoed away into silence. Then, so quiet they almost missed it, a response floated down from the high rocks. "Want to test how accurate I am?" A shot cracked. Jake's gun belt exploded from his hips, cut clean through by a bullet that could have just as easily taken his spine. He stumbled back, eyes wide with terror he couldn't hide anymore. Sarah smiled, cold and sharp as her father's blade. "He's not hunting you," she said softly. "He's herding you, like cattle to the slaughter." Jake backpedaled into the firelight, rushing to grab another gun, but the damage was done. His men had seen his fear, seen how easily the snake could have killed him. Their confidence, already cracking, shattered completely. In the darkness beyond the canyon walls, Carson methodically reloaded his rifle. 9 men left, including the brothers. The odds were getting better, and fear, as he'd learned long ago, was a weapon that killed more surely than any bullet. Territory Marshal Wade found Carson at dawn, cleaning his rifle beside 2 fresh corpses. The bodies lay peaceful, almost elegant in death. 1 shot each, dead before they hit the ground. The old bounty hunter didn't look up from his work. "Still, using that same Winchester," Wade observed. "Always said it shot a touch high. Fixed that years ago." Carson's voice was sandpaper rough from disuse. "Why are you here, Daniel?" Watching a legend come back to life. Wade settled on a rock, studying his old partner, also making sure that legend doesn't lose himself in the process. Carson's hands never stopped their mechanical cleaning. "Already. Lost myself. Moment they took Sarah. 7 men in 3 days, James. Clean kills, everyone, like you never stopped hunting." Wade paused. "Like you never made that promise to Martha." The name made Carson's hands still. Martha's dead. Our daughter isn't, not yet. And after, when Sarah's safe and the Blackwoods are dead, can you go back to being a rancher with this much blood on your hands? The question hung in the desert air. Below them, in the box canyon, voices carried, men arguing, discipline cracking. Carson's strategy was working. Fear was turning them against each other. Two tried to run last night, Carson said finally. Young ones, scared. Would have led me straight to their camp. His voice went distant. Had to kill them. Couldn't risk losing the psychological edge. Jesus, James. Wade shook his head. You're gaming this whole thing like a chess match. These men have families too. Had families. Carson's eyes were winter cold. Made their choice when they took my girl. A shot echoed from the canyon, followed by shouting. Carson smiled grimly. That'll be the Dutch brothers turning on each other. Fear does strange things to men. He was... Right through his spyglass, Wade watched two gang members grappling in the dust, others trying to separate them. The strain was breaking them. You're not just killing them, Wade realized. You're making them destroy themselves. Same strategy. That broke the Carson City gang. Men can face death, can't face the waiting, the knowing that every shadow might be their last. Carson checked his guns with practiced ease. By sunset, they'll either scatter or turn on the Blackwoods. Either way, Jake's protection gets thinner. More shouts from below. Someone screaming about seeing movement in the rocks. Panicked shots fired at shadows. And Sarah? Wade asked quietly. What's seeing this side of her father doing to her? Carson's hands faltered on his gun belt. For a moment, the cold mask slipped, showing the father beneath the killer. She'll understand, has to. Like you understood when your father strapped on his guns that last time. The question hit like a physical blow. Carson's father had been a lawman too, died hunting outlaws when James was 12. The pain of that loss had driven him to become the snake. This is different, he growled. Is it, or are you just telling yourself that to justify? Carson's hand moved like lightning, grabbing Wade's shirt. You have children, Daniel. No. Then... Don't lecture me about justification. He released his grip. A father's supposed to protect his child. I failed. Everything else, the killing, the mind games, my soul's damnation. That's just the price of making it right. Wade studied his old friend. The rancher was gone completely now, replaced by something older and deadlier. The legend that had made killers tremble at a whispered name. Below, another fight broke out. Men screaming accusations, trust shattered by fear and paranoia. You'll lose yourself in this, Wade said softly. Already lost. Carson checked his rifle's action. But Sarah will live. That's all that matters now. He stood, a black shadow against the rising sun. Time to add some more pressure. Watch if you want, or ride away. But don't try to stop me. Wasn't planning to. Wade settled back. Just remember, that girl needs her father back when this is over, not the snake. Carson didn't answer. He was already moving, melting into the rocks, like a ghost. Behind him, the morning wind carried sounds of the gang's disintegration, men turning on each other, discipline crumbling under the weight of terror. 9 men left. But by sunset, Carson knew that number would be smaller. Fear was his ally now, doing half his work for him, and Jake Blackwood, watching his control slip away, would soon learn why even other bounty hunters had feared the silver snake. Night fell like a tomb over the box canyon. The remaining gang members huddled around 3 fires, backs pressed together, jumping at shadows. No one slept anymore. Not since they'd found Miguel sitting dead at his post, a playing card pinned to his chest with his own knife. Not since Carson's voice had whispered from the darkness, naming each man in turn, telling them the order they would die. Jake Blackwood paced the perimeter, shotgun cradled like a child. His confidence had cracked hours ago when he'd found 7 left carved into his saddle. The snake was counting down their deaths. "We should run," Edwin whimpered, earning another backhand from his brother. "Run where?" Tom growled. "Bastards got every trail watched. Killed the Thompson boys when they tried, left their bodies arranged like signposts." A pebble clattered down the canyon wall. Guns snapped up, fingers tightening on triggers. Only darkness answered. "He's playing with us." Rodriguez broke first, scrambling for his horse, like a cat with mice. "I ain't dying like—" The shot came from impossible distance. Rodriguez's hat flew off, a neat hole punched through its crown. A warning that could have been a killing shot. "Nobody leaves." Jake's voice cracked with strain. "We stick together. We can—" "Together?" Hawkins laughed, high and wild, like Peters and James were together when he got them. Found Peters praying, James still holding his rosary. Snake let them finish their prayers before— "Shut up!" Jake fired his shotgun into the darkness, the boom echoing off canyon walls. "You hearing me, Snake? Come down and face us! Face me!" Sarah's voice carried from her cave. "He can hear you. He can always hear you." She sat calmly in her makeshift cell, watching their disintegration with her father's cold eyes. Every hour, she saw more cracks appear. Men who'd been killers and outlaws reduced to frightened boys by the unseen hunter stalking them. "Your pa's still the devil, I remember," Jake told her, hands shaking as he reloaded. 7 years planning this revenge, and he turns it against me. Makes my own men ready to kill each other from fear. A metallic click echoed from the rocks. Just a pebble striking stone, but 3 men opened fire, burning precious ammunition at phantoms. "Stop shooting!" Tom tried to restore order. "He's burning through our ammo. Making us—" "Making us what?" Hawkins rounded on him. "Making us crazy? Already there, friend. Snakes in our heads now. Like he was in Carson City. Remember those stories? Gang killing each other while he watched?" "Thought those were just tales," Edwin whispered. "Tales?" Sarah's laugh was knife-sharp. "Ask Jake. Ask him what it felt like waking up with a gun to his head. Ask him why my father let him live that day." Jake's control snapped. He stormed to her cave, rage overtaking caution. "Should have killed me then. Would have been cleaner than—" The knife seemed to materialize in the rock beside his head, an impossible throw from that distance in this light. But the message was clear. Jake was alive only because the snake allowed it. 7 years, Sarah said softly. 7 years you planned to make him suffer, but you forgot something, forgot what made him a legend. "Yeah?" Jake's voice quivered. "What's that?" "Patience." She smiled her father's smile. "He's not just hunting. He's teaching you what fear really is, how it changes men, how it breaks them." As if to prove her words, Rodriguez broke for his horse again. This time 2 others joined him. They made it 3 steps before Tom Blackwood's gun barked 3 times. "Nobody runs," Tom screamed, gun barrel smoking. "Nobody else dies by the snake's hand. We kill our own." The remaining men stared at the bodies, at their supposed leader. Discipline wasn't just cracking now, it was shattering. "He's won," Edwin sobbed. "Don't you see? We're doing his work for him, killing ourselves while he watches." From the darkness, beyond the firelight, Carson's voice drifted down. 4 left. The words broke something in Jake. He fired wildly into the night, screaming curses, burning through shells until his gun clicked empty. Silence fell again. Heavy. Waiting. Then Sarah began to hum her mother's lullaby, the same tune Carson used to sing her to sleep. The sound carried through the canyon like a funeral dirge. "Dawn's coming," she said quietly. He always liked to finish his hunts at dawn. The remaining men looked at each other with hollow eyes, each wondering if they'd live to see that sunrise. Each knowing deep down that the snake was just playing with them now, teaching them, as Sarah had said, what real fear felt like. Marshal Wade watched the gang's camp through his spyglass as the first hint of false dawn touched the sky. The 4 survivors, Jake, Tom, Edwin, and Hawkins, sat in a tight circle, guns pointed outward. They hadn't slept in 2 days. Hadn't eaten since Carson's last message appeared, carved into their cooking meat. Poison's too easy. You're not just killing them anymore, Wade said to the shadows. You're erasing them. Carson materialized beside him, silent as death. That's the point. By sunrise, they'll be begging for the bullet. Like in Carson City? Exactly like Carson City. Carson checked his rifle's action. Fear kills worse than any gun, makes men forget who they are, what they are. Below, Hawkins suddenly jumped up, pointing his gun at shadows. There, I saw him. I swear Tom Blackwood's bullet took him in the chest. No more chances, Tom snarled. No more letting the snake pick us off. 3 left, Carson whispered, satisfaction in his voice. Wade shivered despite the desert heat. You've become death itself, old friend. No. Carson's eyes reflected starlight like a predator's. Death's too quick. I've become their nightmare. Like they became Sarah's. He stood, checking his guns one final time. The silver Colt gleamed with deadly promise. Sun's coming, he said softly. Time to end this story. Wade watched him fade into the rocks, remembering why men once whispered that the silver snake wasn't human at all, but something darker, something that lived in the spaces between life and death, teaching evil men the true meaning of fear. Sarah's ears caught it first. Hoofbeats approaching the canyon in the pre-dawn darkness. Not her father's silent movement, but multiple riders coming fast. She pressed against the cave bars, straining to see. Jake Blackwood heard it too. Finally, our reinforcements. But when the riders appeared at the canyon mouth, it wasn't the help he'd expected. Marshal Wade rode in first, followed by a woman Sarah had never seen. She was older, dignified despite trail dust, wearing a black dress and carrying herself like royalty. Martha? Jake's voice cracked. Martha Carson? Sarah's world tilted. Martha Carson was her mother's name, her dead mother's name. Hello, Jake. The woman's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Been a long time. You're dead, Tom Blackwood stammered. Snake said you died of fever. James said a lot of things. She dismounted smoothly. All to protect our daughter from the truth. Sarah's hands gripped the iron bars tighter. My mother died when I was small. Father said, your father says what needs saying to keep his secrets. Martha's eyes found her daughter's. Just like, he never told you I was Jake Blackwood's sister before I married him. The words hit like physical blows. Sarah staggered back from the bars. Jake Blackwood, the man her father had hunted, the killer holding her captive, was her uncle. Why? She whispered. Because the truth would destroy everything he built. Martha turned to Jake. The precious legend of the silver snake. The story of a noble bounty hunter who gave up his guns to raise his daughter in peace. Wade stepped forward. Tell her the rest, Martha. Tell her why you let them all think you were dead. Because I saw what James really was. Martha's voice hardened. Not a man of justice, a killer who loved the hunt more than anything, more than me. Would have loved it more than you, Sarah, if I hadn't taken you away. Took her to protect her, Jake added. Then Carson found you, tracked you down like he tracked all his prey. But I was ready. Martha smiled grimly. Faked my death. Made him think fever took me. Let him raise you these past years thinking he could bury his true nature. Sarah's mind raced through memories, her father's gentle hands, his patient teachings, his quiet strength. You're lying. He's a good man. Good men don't enjoy killing like he does. Martha gestured at the canyon. Look what he's done here, turning men mad with fear, playing with them like a cat with mice. That's the real James Carson, the man I ran from. The man who's standing right behind you, Carson's voice cut through the dawn light. He emerged from shadows that should have been empty, silver Colt drawn. But for the first time in the hunt, his hand trembled slightly. Hello, James. Martha didn't turn. Still making widows, I see. Still spinning lies. His voice was sandpaper rough. "Still trying to poison our daughter against me. Truth's not poison, just hurts more than your pretty tales." Sarah looked between them, the mother she'd thought dead, the father she thought she knew. All this time, everything was a lie? Not everything. Carson's eyes never left Martha. Loved you. Protected you, that was real. By hunting your own brother-in-law? Martha laughed bitterly. By being the very thing you claimed to fight against? Jake was killing innocent families long before I married you. Carson's gun stayed steady now. Used your name to shield himself. Made me choose between justice and family. And we know what the snake always chooses. Jake's voice dripped venom. Why we had to take Sarah. Make you feel what family really means. Dawn painted the canyon blood red as truth, and lies tangled like smoke. Sarah saw her father's face change, saw the mask crack to show pain beneath the killer's cold. Had to be. And done, Martha said softly. Had to show her the monster wearing her father's skin. Wade's hand drifted to his own gun. James, don't. But Sarah saw it first. The subtle shift in Jake's stance, the hidden derringer appearing in his sleeve. Saw what this whole revelation was meant to be, a distraction. "Pa!" she screamed. "Behind you!" Carson's reaction was pure instinct. He threw himself sideways as Edwin's bullet cut air where he'd stood. But the dodge put him in Tom's line of fire, forcing him to roll behind a boulder as shots exploded around him. "Now you see!" Martha shouted. Over the gunfire. "See how easily he moves in violence, like a snake in its own element." Wade drew his gun, but Jake's derringer pressed against his ribs. "Drop it, Marshal. This is family business." Sarah's mind raced. The whole revelation had been orchestrated. Her mother's return timed perfectly to distract her father, to make him vulnerable, to make him doubt. "You used me," she called to Martha, "used me to break him." "To save you," her mother corrected, "from becoming what he is." Another exchange of gunfire. Carson's silver Colt barked twice, answering Tom's. Wild shots. But Sarah saw the difference now. Her father's legendary precision was off. The revelations had shaken him. 7 years, Jake laughed. 7 years planning this moment. Watching you play rancher, play loving father. Now everyone sees the truth. The monster beneath the mask. Carson's voice carried from behind the boulder, strained but controlled. "Sarah, everything I did was to protect you." "From what?" Martha demanded. "From knowing your real family, from understanding what kind of man raised you, from becoming like them." Carson's words cut like knives. "Ask your brother about the families he butchered. Ask him about children younger than you, killed for witnessing his crimes. Lies." But Jake's voice shook slightly. "Truth's not a lie just because it hurts." Carson threw Martha's words back at her. "Ask him about Mary Beth, about how she really died." Something in Jake's expression changed. Sarah saw her mother notice it too. "Jake?" Martha's certainty wavered. "What's he talking about?" "Don't listen." Jake's derringer swung from Wade to his sister. "He's playing his games, like always." "Mary Beth caught him killing a family," Carson continued relentlessly. "Couldn't live with knowing her brothers were monsters, was going to turn them in. So, Jake killed her himself, shot his own sister in the back." Martha's face went pale. "No, you said the snake killed her. Let him twist everything." Jake's eyes were fever bright. "Like he twisted you against your own blood." But Sarah saw the truth in his desperation, saw it in the way Tom and Edwin wouldn't meet their sister's eyes. "You killed our sister?" Martha whispered. "Our Mary Beth." The moment of revelation shattered. Everything. Wade's gun appeared from nowhere, catching Jake unaware. Tom and Edwin broke cover, trying to reach their brother. Carson erupted from behind the boulder, silver Colt flashing. In the chaos, Sarah saw her mother's world crumble. saw her realize that her hatred of Carson, her certainty of his monstrousness, had blinded her to the real evil in her blood family. "Pa!" Sarah screamed as Jake's derringer swung toward her father, but Carson was already moving, Silver Colt singing its deadly song. The bullet took Jake in the shoulder, spinning him around. The same shoulder Carson had shot him in 7 years ago. "Like poetry," Jake laughed through blood. "Everything comes full circle." Then he raised his derringer one final time, not at Carson, but at Martha. "If I can't break you one way, Snake," he snarled, "I'll break you another." The canyon exploded with gunfire as dawn painted the rocks red as blood. Gunsmoke hung thick in the canyon as Sarah struggled to make sense of the chaos. Wade was down, clutching his side. Her mother lay sprawled behind a boulder, Jake's bullet having only grazed her shoulder. Tom and Edwin had scattered to opposite sides of the canyon, pinning her father down between them, and Jake was laughing. "Beautiful," he spat blood. "The great silver snake, trapped between saving his wife or his child," Carson's voice carried from his position. "Martha, get to cover." "Still giving orders," Jake taunted. "Still thinking you control everything. But look around, Snake. Look what your precious control has brought you." Sarah saw the trap unfold. Tom was working his way toward her cage, while Edwin kept her father pinned. Jake, despite his wounded shoulder, had a clear shot at Martha. A perfect triangle of threat, forcing Carson to choose who to protect. "Pa," she called out, "forget us. End this." "Can't do that, darling." His voice was steel, wrapped in anguish. "Can't lose you, either of you." That's his weakness, Jake told her. Always trying to save everyone. Couldn't just be a killer. Had to pretend he was something more, a protector, a father. He spat the words like poison. Now that weakness ends him. Martha's voice cut through the tension. "You killed Mary Beth." "Had to." Jake's laugh turned ugly. "She was weak too, like you became after marrying him, weak and soft and—" The shot caught everyone by surprise. Martha stood swaying, Wade's backup gun smoking in her hand. Jake stumbled, a fresh bullet hole in his leg. "That's for our sister," she said coldly. The distraction was all Carson needed. His Silver Colt flashed twice. Tom screamed, his gun hand shattered. Edwin's rifle exploded into splinters, but Jake was still laughing. "Think you've won?" Blood darkened his shirt. "Look closer, Snake." Sarah saw it first, the lit dynamite fuse at her feet. Jake must have rolled it there during the chaos. 10 seconds, maybe less. "Pa!" Carson erupted from cover, running flat out for her cage. But Tom, despite his shattered hand, tackled him. They went down in a tangle of limbs and curses. "James." Martha's second shot went wide as dizziness from blood loss hit her. 8 seconds. Edwin was running, abandoning his brothers. Wade tried to rise but fell, his wound proving too severe. 5 seconds. Sarah grabbed the cage bars, yanking with desperate strength. The old iron groaned but held. 3 seconds. "Sarah!" Carson's voice held a father's terror as he fought to break free from Tom. 2 seconds. She looked up, met her father's eyes, saw the legend of the silver snake fade beneath a parent's desperate love. 1 second, the explosion turned the world white. Dust and smoke blanketed the canyon, turning dawn's light blood red. Carson pulled himself from beneath Tom's unconscious body, ears ringing from the blast. His heart stopped when he saw the mangled remains of Sarah's cage. Empty. Sarah. His voice cracked with desperation. "Sarah!" "Here, Pa." Her voice came from above. Somehow, she'd managed to scale the cage's back wall in those final seconds, climbing just high enough to escape the blast. Relief hit him like a physical blow, but movement in the smoke snapped him back to the hunter's alertness. Jake was gone, leaving only a blood trail. Tom lay senseless, but Edwin had vanished too. "Martha!" Carson called out. "Alive!" Wade answered for her. "But losing blood needs a doctor soon." Carson did the calculations with cold precision. The nearest doctor was 4 hours' ride. Martha's wound wasn't immediately fatal, but shock and blood loss would become deadly given time. And somewhere in the smoke, Jake was orchestrating his final play. James. Martha's voice was weak but clear. I was wrong about everything. Save your strength. No. Need you to hear this. What Jake did to Mary Beth, I see it now. See what you were really hunting. Not just criminals. Monsters. A shot cracked out. Carson dove for cover as splinters exploded from the rock beside his head. Jake's voice drifted through the smoke. Still here, Snake. Still got one last lesson to teach you about family. Sarah started to climb down, but Carson motioned her to stay put. High ground might be her only safety soon. Wade, he called, softly. Get Martha out of here. Take the South Trail. Like hell, Martha tried to rise. I'm not leaving. Please. The word caught in Carson's throat. Let me protect my family. Just once, let me do what I should have done 7 years ago. Something in his voice reached her. She saw not the legendary hunter, but the man she'd loved. The father who'd raised their child with gentle hands and desperate hope. James. She pressed Wade's spare gun into his hand. End this. End all of it. Carson checked the weapon. 5 shots left. +2 in his Colt. 7 bullets to finish a blood feud 7 years in the making. Wade helped Martha to her horse, but more shots from the smoke forced them to separate. Jake and Edwin had positioned themselves to cut off escape. This would end here, one way or another. You know what's funny, Snake? Jake's voice echoed off canyon walls. How hard you tried to bury the killer inside you, playing rancher, playing father, but in the end here you are, right back where you belong, in the blood and the dust. Carson moved like a shadow through the smoke, reading the terrain by instinct. Jake was hurt, losing blood. He tried to finish this quick. Edwin was the wild card, young, scared, unpredictable. Pa, Sarah whispered from her perch. East wall. Edwin's working around behind you. His daughter. His blood. Reading sign like he'd taught her, staying calm in chaos. Pride mixed with fear for her safety. Marshall's hit bad, she continued. Can't get Mother clear while Jake's got the high ground. Carson touched his silver Colt, feeling its familiar weight. The weapon that had made his legend. The weapon he'd hoped never to need again. Sarah. He pitched his voice low, using the canyon's echoes to mask his position. Whatever happens next, remember I love you. Everything I did, becoming the snake, giving it up, taking it back, was for you. I know, Pa. Her voice held tears and steel. I know. Somewhere in the smoke, Jake's laugh turned into coughing, blood loss making him lightheaded, making him desperate. Time to finish our story, Snake. Time to show your girl what you really are. Carson touched the tin star in his pocket, his last badge, stained dark with old blood. 7 years ago, he tried to end this with mercy. Tried to arrest Jake rather than kill him. That mercy had cost Mary Beth her life, driven Martha away, and now threatened Sarah. Some debts could only be paid in blood. Sarah, he said softly. Close your eyes. No. Her voice was pure Carson steel. I need to see, need to understand. The smoke was thinning. Soon, the final act would begin. A legend would either die or be reborn in blood, and a daughter would finally know the full truth of her father's nature. The smoke cleared enough to reveal Jake standing atop a boulder, bleeding but defiant. He held something in his left hand, Sarah's music box, salvaged from the ranch. Remember this, Snake? He wound it slowly. Martha's wedding gift. The one Sarah wanted fixed. The broken melody wheezed out, distorted and haunting in the dawn light. Last time we faced off, Jake continued, you had a choice. Justice or family. Badge or blood. Now you've got another choice. Edwin emerged from shadows. Rifle trained on Martha. Tom stirred, his good hand finding his fallen gun. You're fast, Snake. Maybe fast enough to take me before I shoot, but not fast enough to save everyone. Jake's eyes were fever-bright with blood loss and madness. So, choose, your woman or your child, your past or your future. Show Sarah what matters most to the legendary Silver Snake. Carson's voice carried quiet but clear. You're right, Jake. Time for choices. His silver colt caught the rising sun, scales gleaming like liquid fire. Time to choose who we really are. The canyon held, its breath waiting for the blood that would paint its walls. Everything happened in heartbeats. Tom's gun came up toward Carson. Edwin's rifle swung toward Martha. Jake aimed at Sarah, high on her perch. 3 threats, 3 targets, 1 impossible choice. But they'd forgotten who they were dealing with. Carson moved like his namesake, like quicksilver in the dawn light. The silver colt sang its first note, taking Tom's gun hand at the wrist. His second shot shattered Edwin's rifle, even as the young man's finger tightened on the trigger. Jake's gun barked, but Carson was already rolling. His thrown knife caught Jake's shoulder, the same one he'd shot twice before. The music box fell, shattering on rocks below. "Now, Sarah!" Carson shouted. His daughter had been waiting for his signal. She dropped from her perch onto Edwin, taking him down hard the way her father had taught her. Wade's backup gun appeared in Martha's hands, keeping the younger Blackwood covered. But Jake wasn't finished. Blood streaming from 3 wounds in the same shoulder, he pulled a hidden derringer. "Fast as ever, Snake," he laughed. But not fast enough. The small gun swung toward Martha. Carson's silver colt roared once more. Click. Empty. Jake's laugh turned. Triumphant. "Finally, the great Silver Snake runs dry. Now watch your family." The second gun, Martha's gift to Carson, barked from his left hand. Jake's derringer exploded into fragments. 7 years planning this, Carson said quietly. "Should have remembered I learned to shoot with both hands." "Kill me then." Jake straightened, arms spread wide. "Finish it. Show your girl what you really are." "No." Carson's voice was cold as mountain streams. "That's what you never understood, Jake. I'm not just a killer. Not just the snake. I'm a father." His next shot took Jake in his gun arm, crippling but not killing. "A husband." Another round shattered Jake's knee, dropping him. "And a lawman." The final bullet struck Jake's other shoulder as he fell. "You'll hang proper this time. Face justice for Mary Beth, for all of them." Jake lay in the dust, bleeding but alive. "Should have killed me. I'll never stop." The blow caught him perfect, turning off his lights clean as Carson had ever done it. Already. "Stopped," Carson told his unconscious brother-in-law. "Story's over." He turned to find Sarah watching him, not with fear or horror at the violence, but with understanding. She saw all of him now, the killer and the protector, the legend and the father, and she accepted both. "You could have killed him," she said softly. "Once I would have." Carson gathered her close, breathing in her familiar scent. "But that's not who I am anymore. Not who you needed me to be." Martha approached slowly, Wade's gun still covering Edwin. "I was wrong," she said, "about everything. Thought I was protecting her from a monster. Instead, I almost gave her to one. We all got things wrong." Carson touched her cheek gently. "Questions is, can we get them right going forward?" She leaned into his hand. "If you'll let me try." Wade limped up, holding his side. "Touching as this is, we've got prisoners to transport. Unless you want to finish them, Snake?" "No." Carson looked at his family, the wife he'd thought lost, the daughter who'd seen his darkest side and still loved him. "Think it's time to bury the snake. For real this time. Does this mean we're going home?" Sarah asked. Carson nodded. "Home, all of us. If your mother wants," Martha's eyes filled with tears. "Home sounds good." Together, they watched the sun rise fully over the canyon walls. The night's shadows burned away, taking old ghosts with them. The legend of the silver snake was ending, but the story of the Carson family was just beginning. As they bound the prisoners, Sarah touched her father's arm. "You knew all along, didn't you? That you had one more bullet than Jake thought? That's why you let him talk, let him think he had you." Carson smiled. "Counted every shot just like I taught you. Same as I counted every second till I found you. Same as I'll count every blessing that brought your mother back to us." "And the snake?" she asked. "Will you really bury him this time?" He looked at his silver colt, then handed it to her. "Keep it, not as a killer's weapon, but as a protector's tool. A reminder that sometimes the darkest parts of ourselves can serve the brightest cause." Wade finished securing the prisoners. "I'd say this is one for the books, but some stories are better left untold," Carson finished. "Let them remember the legend. We'll live the truth." Martha took his hand. "And what truth is that? That a man can be both shadow and light, that love's stronger than vengeance, and that family's more than blood. It's choice, every day's choice, to be better than we were." Sarah hugged them both, and for a moment the canyon that had seen so much death now witnessed something rarer. Healing, forgiveness, hope. "Let's go home," Carson said softly. "Got a ranch that needs running, a life that needs living, and a family that needs building." As they rode out, leaving Wade to handle the prisoners, Sarah looked back at the canyon one last time. The legend of the silver snake would live on in whispered stories around campfires. But she knew the better story, the one about a father's love, a mother's redemption, and the strength of a family forged in fire and tempered by mercy. The real story. The true one, their story. 3 months later, autumn painted the Carson ranch in gold and amber. The house bore no scars from the kidnapping. Carson had rebuilt everything, better than before. Sarah's new piano sat where the old one had been, and her mother's repaired. Music box played true and clear on the mantel. The Blackwood brothers hung 2 weeks after their capture. Jake died as he'd lived, cursing the snake's name. But Edwin, youngest and last, asked Carson's forgiveness before the trap dropped. Whether for Mary Beth, for Sarah, or for all of it, no one could say. Carson gave it anyway. Some cycles of violence needed to end. Martha's roses bloomed along the front porch, her way of putting down new roots. She and Sarah spent long hours there, making up for lost years, healing old wounds. Sometimes Carson would find them laughing. Together, so alike it made his heart ache with gratitude. His silver colt stayed in Sarah's trunk, wrapped in oilcloth. Not hidden anymore, just set aside. A tool from darker days, preserved to remind them that good men could do hard things for the right reasons. Wade still rode by sometimes, sharing coffee and memories. The legend of the silver snake grew larger in telling, but the truth lived quiet. On their ranch, a father who'd faced his demons, a mother who'd found her way home, a daughter who'd learned that love was stronger than fear. One evening, as sunset painted the sky in shades of promise, Carson stood at his fence line. Sarah rode up beside him, sitting her horse with the same easy grace her mother had at that age. "Riders coming," she said, nodding toward dust on the horizon. 3 of them, Carson agreed, moving tired, looking for help, not trouble. She smiled at how naturally they both still read sign. "Some lessons, the good ones, stayed with you. Think they need the snake?" she asked softly. Carson looked back at his house, where Martha was setting out supper plates for 4, always ready, to feed strays. "No," he said, "think they just need a family willing to help. Think that's something better than any legend." Together, father and daughter rode out to meet the travelers, leaving the ghost of the silver snake where it belonged. In stories told around campfires, while the truth lived on in quiet acts of mercy. Some said the snake died in that canyon. Others claimed he still rode the territories. But on the Carson ranch, they knew different, knew that sometimes the deadliest predator could become the finest protector. that yesterday's sins could be washed clean by tomorrow's grace, and that the greatest legend of all was the simple truth of family.